All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Recovery Unplugged Live. This is a very special event tonight. We've been highlighting people from the Conquering Disabilities with Film International Film Festival. Hey, Amy, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. My book finally dropped. It finally went live in both print and ebook. And
All right.
usually I sell more ebooks than print books, but this time around, I haven't sold any ebooks, but I've sold several copies of the print book so far.
Hey. All right.
So the way Amazon does that, they do Kindle pages, and it's not that they buy a unit from you like a book. It's how many pages of the book they read, and that's how you get paid.
Oh, through the ebook platform.
Yes.
It goes by how far they go, but by how deep they go in the book.
Yes.
That's interesting. That's an interesting metric. I didn't know that.
Yes. The independent authors hate it.
Oh, sure.
much rather they and they also have on Kindle Unlimited, they can return a book in 5 days. But if it's a real reader, you can read that book and then say, it wasn't good, and then send it back, and you don't get counted for the sale.
And what's the name of it? It's the making of Letters to Daniel?
Daniel. It's the behind the scenes memoir of what it took to make the film. And I'm really proud of it. So the book kind of, as far as the effort it took to write it, it was after doing the production and shooting and everything, the actual act of processing because it went so fast. We shot in 6 days. Wow. So it was like a compressed time. And writing this book allowed me to kind of process what I had just been through.
Mm. Right. What's the crux of it? Like, what'll people take away from reading it? What will they learn, or what will they gain?
Well, there's they'll learn that it takes a small village to make a movie. You meet the people you meet the crew, the main cast, and you learn like how I function on any given day, and how my bipolar like would play into it. And of course, there's a lot about Missy in there, and because if she hadn't been on set, I don't think I would have survived it. But having Mark Manis on set was a stabilizing force too, because I couldn't have gone nearly as fast if I didn't have someone with his level and it be as good as it was without having someone of his level of expertise with 34 years experience being my DP. It would have been, I think it would have been a disaster.
Gotcha.
We had like things happen during filming, but because everybody was there for the same purpose, it just like I'll say, like on the third day, we get to the church. It's supposed to be empty. There's the Sudanese Episcopal Church is in there, and there's 30 screaming kids in the nursery, and we're filming a funeral scene. So there you are on the other side of the sanctuary doors, kicking them back into play. And
whoa, wait! Please don't allude to me kicking babies. Okay. But yes, I was, I was encouraging them to go in a different direction and putting some twine around the door. That's all.
Yes.
You know what though? I felt, like I said 100 times, I felt worse for the guy who was responsible for those 30 children. He was working very hard with little support and a small space.
Yeah, and then we had an actor, no call, no show. So we didn't have a picture of, well, we weren't able to have a picture of who was supposed to be Missy's father, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like, that was done. And then Brandon opens the sanctuary doors to the outside, and he hears a tornado siren going off. He says, Amy, there's a tornado siren going off. And I'm like, can anything else happen today? But somehow we got through it. We got the scene shot, and everything turned out okay.
Right on. So everyone check out The Making of Letters to Daniel. It's on Amazon currently. Amy's most recent ebook. You also have printed versions.
It's also in print form, so if you want a traditional print book, it's available in print form.
And we opened the show with the explosion scenes from Final Destination, the horror film series, and this was a montage done by SC2 Hayasui. It was really good. It just showed the explosion scenes. We have Jeffrey Reddick in here tonight. We also have Del Weston from the Action on Film Film Festival, and we are coming to you live on Vim TV, YouTube, and Facebook for the Amy Unplugged page for Recovery Unplugged Live. So let's kick it off. Amy and the whole group's here now. Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Hello.
Good. So Amy and Del, I'm going to let you guys take it over. Amy, I know you have some good questions, and let's just have a good conversation tonight. We got a bunch of people watching, so.
Okay, so Del, I want to give the platform to you a little bit and allow you to talk about what AOF Megafest actually is and how people, if they're watching, have something they can submit, how they can do that.
Well, Action on Film Megafest is a conglomeration of around 10 different events. That is 7 film festivals and then a number of specialty awards, from the Young Storyteller Awards, which is a free to enter competition. Then we have the Icon Awards and the legendary stunts with Dr. Robert Goldman and Michael DePasquale. And then we have our shows, which is Conquering Disabilities, Action on Film, Hollywood Dreams, News Fest, New Cinema, and Annabelle Monroe, Most Important Films, and the brand new Great Asian Las Vegas Film Awards. And that competition, those things all happen at the same time, same place, same dates. This year we'll be running from from August 28th to the 1st online, and then a live show happening from the 2nd to the 6th. Usually the show runs 12 days live, but with COVID and a few other things, people just cannot guarantee the locations for us. But it looks like everything is opening up, and you can submit to those festivals either through Film Freeway, or you can use our new platform, No Risk Fee Fest. That's noriskfeefest.com, where you can enter any of those shows without paying a dime. All you need to do is submit the work, and if we can see where we can showcase it or put it in the festival or give it a nomination or award, then you can pay your submission fee, but not until we've watched it, so there is no risk of you losing money.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move to Jeffrey, but if you have any questions, Dell, at any time, feel free to jump in and ask them.
Like my mother told me many years ago, why don't you just shut up? That's what I'm going to do.
Okay, tonight I'm thrilled to have a very special guest on tonight's show, a produced screenwriter with films such as Tamra, The Final Wish, The Good Samaritan, and the iconic horror Final Destination franchise, Jeffrey Reddick. Jeffrey, why don't we start with how you got started in the industry?
Hey, Amy. Thank you for having me on the show. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Even though we're not in person. I started off in the film industry. It's a funny story. When I was 14, I saw the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie and fell in love with it. And so I wrote an idea for a prequel. And I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I was a little hillbilly living in my trailer. And I found out who ran the studio, New Line Cinema, that made Nightmare on Elm Street. And I sent the prequel idea to them. And they sent it back to me the first time. And so I sent it back because I didn't know any better. And I was like, you know, Bob Shea was the man who ran the studio. And I was like, look, Mr. Shea, I've seen 3 of your movies and I've spent like $2 on your stuff. And I think you can at least take 5 minutes to read my story. And so he read it and he got back in touch with me, which was a great blessing. And so I ended up staying in touch with him and his assistant until I was in college. And then I went to New York for the summer to study acting. And I got an internship at New Line Cinema at that studio and ended up working there for 11 years. So they bought, after I'd been there about 7 years, when they bought my script for Final Destination. So it was a long journey, but it started off, 14-year-old little hillbilly in his trailer, big dreams.
You're known for several things, as you said, the most enduring being the Final Destination series. What inspired you to create that story, and what do you think is its appeal?
The inspiration for Final Destination, the kernel for the inspiration came when I was taking a flight home to Kentucky, and I read an article about a woman who was on vacation, and her mom called her and said, "Don't take the flight that you're on tomorrow. I have a bad feeling about it." And so she switched flights, and I guess the flight that she was supposed to be on crashed. So I was reading that on a plane, and that put the idea in my head. And it, sometimes you get good ideas, but you're not sure exactly what story you want to tell with them. So, it took me a while to figure out a story. But I was trying to get an agent, and back in the day, they wanted you to write a script for something that was already on TV as a sample, so they could, see that you could write. And so I used that idea as kind of a setup for an episode of The X-Files, which was like one of my favorite shows. And before I sent it into the show, I got an agent, but my friends at New Line were like, "This is a great idea for a feature, so you should work on this as a feature film." And so I met up with some producers because even though I worked at the studio, I knew it was probably smarter for me to go in with producers attached to it. And we had a hard time selling it at the time. I mean, they were like, "We don't understand, death. You can't see it. You can't fight it. We don't understand it." Once we threatened to take it to another studio, they bought it. So even though they didn't quite understand it, they made it. And I think the universal appeal of the movie. I think, first of all, they're fun. They're fun horror films. But I think the fact that we don't show death has made it, because it's been a hit internationally as well as domestically. And I think the fact that we don't put any kind of religious or any kind of beliefs on death, it's open to interpretation for anybody anywhere. So whether, you believe in God, if you don't believe in God, if you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, whatever, I think that's what, it kind of struck a chord with people because we're all afraid of dying. And I think with Final Destination, it's just kind of a fun roller coaster ride. And yes, the deaths are really cool, but, a lot of it's the buildup. Like, you don't know exactly, what in this room is going to get people. And, you know, I still get log truck memes like today, you know, like, you know, and people are like, I'm sure you get tired of seeing these. I'm like, no, they feed my soul. Send me more. It's really, this is a horror fan. It's very nice and humbling that something that you created has taken on such a life and is, you know, been enjoyed by so many people. It's really amazing.
Final Destination just celebrated its 20th anniversary. Are there any plans to reboot the series?
I don't. They're working on a new one, so I think we'll have some news. You'll probably hear some news by the end of the year on when that's happening. I don't know if a reboot's the right word for it. I think, you know, with Final Destination, the concept is so crucial to it that I don't think we'll deviate much from that. I mean, what's been discussed publicly so far, and, you know, the producers mentioned this before, is, you know, the idea was to set it in the world of EMTs, emergency medical technicians, and firefighters. And this was a while back, actually, so it has nothing to do with kind of all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, but it was more the idea of taking people who kind of deal with life and death on a daily basis, and then all of a sudden now they're faced with like a way of death coming after them that they've never thought of before. So I'm hoping that that's the direction they'll kind of go in, but yeah, I'm just cool that they're keeping death alive.
You're also a novelist. You turned your film Tamra into a book. What inspired you to do that?
Honestly, it was it was just one thing. I love the movie. I think Tamra is like a really fun, great movie, but the producers kind of really watered down the story and took a lot of the edge off and took a lot of the sex out of it. Not that it was like a porno or anything, but they just watered it down a lot. So I kind of wanted to get the story out there. And so I had partnered up with a friend of mine, Jonathan Doyle, who's a really good novelist. And, you know, I'd written short stories growing up, but over the years, I've just written scripts. So I'm so used to that format that I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of get into the novel world again, just to delve into the writing the details and writing everything from like an internal perspective of people thinking, as opposed to scripts, which is all about what they're saying and doing. So I kind of wanted to get the original story out there, and then, you know, also wanted to just kind of flex that creative muscle of writing a novel as well.
Can I ask a question, Amy?
Yes.
You mentioned that the producers watered down the previous film for some of the content and maybe some of the graphic nature of it. When you see that, what is your response to that? Well,
my thing is, I never write stuff to be gratuitous. So it's the things that they took out that bothered me a little bit. And, you know, the biggest thing which I think impacted the story was, you know, if you haven't seen Tamra, it's about it's basically my homage to Carrie. I love Carrie. I love bullies getting revenge movies. But Carrie, I'm always like, oh, you have to wait till the last 20 minutes for her to go crazy on everybody. So I wanted to kind of do a movie where somebody who's bullied and she tragically gets killed, but, you know, her bulliers, if that's a word, her bulliers. Close enough. Don't know that she's into witchcraft. So they bury her in the woods, and then she walks into class the next Monday, you know, looking beautiful and strong and powerful, and she starts getting revenge on them. And one of the targets of her bullying were these two guys who had been, you know, date raping girls. Like, we don't show it, but you know, it's implied that they get girls drunk and take advantage of them. So in the script, she basically puts a spell on them, and she makes one of the guys rape the other one. And Lionsgate bought the movie to put out theatrically based on the script, and so nobody had any problems with it up until the night before shooting, which always, when you get a call the night before shooting, you're like, what's going on? And so they're like, well, how do you want this scene to be shot? And I'm like, well, it's not a sex scene. It should just be shot however you would do it if you were, you know, showing a man raping a woman, you know, but not graphically. But they ended up pussing out completely. And so now if you watch the movie, the guys they kiss her, and then they start kissing each other, and then they fall out of frame. Yeah. So it kind of changes the whole meaning of the scene, because everybody's like, what did she do? She make him gay for a minute or something to punish them? So, and then also the female lead in the movie was coming out. She was a lesbian and she was coming out of the closet. And how that paid off in the script was that, you know, Tamra puts a spell on her parents, and her parents show up at the hospital and are basically like, you know, you put a knife in our heart by being gay. And so they try to murder her, which is every gay person's, you know, biggest fear is like your family's going to abandon you. And so they were like, well, we can't afford the parents. So they cut that whole subplot out. So now you watch the movie and you're like, well, the lead and the other lead guy normally in a movie like this would kind of get together, but for some reason these two don't. And it's like, well, that's the reason they don't. But so there was just a lot of subtext that was in the original script that we lost that I wanted. What
was your response to that, though? I mean, how did that feel to you, knowing that not only had the nature of the film changed, but you had no power to change what the change was? What's that like?
It was very frustrating. And again, I'm used to, I don't get precious about stuff unless I feel it's important. And I felt like with that movie, what they were doing is they were trying to manage me. You know what I'm saying? And when Lionsgate saw the movie, they were like, well, this isn't the movie that we read. So they put it out on video, but we didn't get a theatrical release. And, you know, really it's just the two things that they took out were kind of gay related, or could be, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I was offended by that, but I was also like annoyed that I felt like, again, they didn't say anything till like the day before filming, you know, for the one scene, or, you know, they mentioned while they were shooting, oh, we can't afford the parents, so we're going to have to change that. So, you know, it felt like typical Hollywood, you know, BS is like, they kind of knew going in that they were going to try to get this stuff out, but they didn't want to piss me off and get in an argument or have me explain why it was important. So they just the producers just kind of went behind my back and kind of did the old Hollywood bait and switch. So, you know, it pissed me off. I got over it, you know, because in this industry, it's so hard to get a film made, that it's a blessing to even get one made. And so I never want to sound like I'm not grateful, because there's a lot of amazing fans of the movie out there. And I think the movie's actually good. It's just, you know, I wish that it had been a little truer to what I wrote. So I never want to sound like I'm ungrateful, because, you know, I know how many people are struggling out there trying to make their dreams happen. And, you know, I'm very fortunate and blessed, but, you know, as someone who creates something, it does get frustrating.
Wow. Sorry, Amy, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
No, that's okay. That's a good question.
All my questions are good questions. That's why they're never answered.
This fall, you are set to make your directorial debut. What is the title of the movie and what is it about?
Well, actually, it's great, but it's going to be hopefully coming out in the fall. So I finished it. Yeah, no, it's really exciting. It was originally called Good Samaritan, but the new title is Don't Look Back. And it's basically about a group of people who see somebody getting assaulted in a park, and for various reasons, they don't help. And like one person films it, and it ends up going viral. And then somebody or something starts coming after the witnesses that stood by and did nothing. So you're not sure until the end of the movie if it's supernatural or if there's a real killer stalking them. So it's a departure for me in that it's not a straight up horror movie. It's more of like a mystery suspense movie. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm very excited to have it come out and have people see it. So I'm not sure exactly, but we're thinking it's going to come out in the fall. Hopefully around October is what I'm hoping. Just hopefully not going up against Halloween. But yeah, I'm really excited. It was really a, fun thing to do, and my first one. So I have a couple other ones that I want to do as well. So it was a really exciting experience.
Okay, so now I'm going to pivot and talk about mental health. Mm-hmm. I like to say I grew up in a 12-step family. My mom and dad met in Overeaters Anonymous, and my uncle, before he passed, had 19 years of sobriety in AA. If you're comfortable, could you share some of your recovery journey?
Yeah, of course. As of February 4th, I'm 13 years sober now. Yay! I know it took many starts and finishes. So I always tell people, admitting you need help is important. And then if you fall off the wagon, getting back on as soon as possible is important. Because I've been through the period where you fall off and then you feel embarrassed and you feel ashamed. But I guess I should start with my journey. Just a little bit of my drunkalog was, I didn't start drinking till I was 21. never had any interest in it. I lived in New York for a couple of years and, went out to clubs and had a great time, never touched alcohol. I was actually very snobby about it. So I'm glad that I've actually gone through this because it's given me an understanding of addiction that I didn't have before, because before I just thought, there was a lot of alcoholism in my family. My mom wasn't an alcoholic, but a lot of my other relatives were. So I just always thought it was something you could just stop doing, which a lot of sober people think. They think it's about willpower. They don't understand what addiction actually is, and that it is really a disease that you have to treat and overcome and fight with, a lot of times for the rest of your life. But I started drinking when I went back to Kentucky for a couple of years to finish school. And honestly, it was so boring. There was nothing to do that my friends were like, let's drink. I'm like, all right. And then I tried vodka and then I just never stopped after that. At the beginning, of course, this is a very similar story to a lot of people. At the beginning, it kind of made me feel comfortable in my own skin. But then that turned into, I needed it to feel comfortable in my own skin whenever I went out in public. So, as a person of color in the South, there was a lot of racism that was, prevalent back then. Certainly a lot of homophobia. So when, me and my friends would kind of sneak off to the gay bar, like I'd need a couple of drinks just to get my liquid courage up. Just drinking was really my drug of choice. I mean, I've dabbled in a couple of other things, but literally tried it a couple of times. I'm like, I don't like drugs. But drinking was just something that I ended up needing to do. And it became, you don't realize it, it's becoming a habit, but all of a sudden you're going out with your friends 3 or 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week. I had a lot of experiences that should have been my bottom, the one time I drove drunk, I like totaled my car, and thank God I didn't hurt anybody. And I wasn't hurt at all, but I completely totaled my car, and I don't even know how I drove, and somehow drove it home and parked it. And it really was the only time I've driven drunk. But again, like that should have been my bottom, and it should have been a lot of bottoms. But they say, at some point you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Yeah. And that's what it was for me, because I'd gotten to the point where I was certainly functioning, but I would stay at home and just drink. And I'd call my friends that would drink all the time, and we'd just stay on the phone and drink. And, I'd sit around feeling sorry for myself. And then when I had a job opportunity, I'd clean myself up, do the work I had to do, and then start back over again. And then one day I was just sitting here, and I realized that the reason I'd kind of tried and failed so many times was that I kept trying to keep my life, but just not drink. So I still wanted to go out with my friends all the time, to the bars and to the clubs and to the house parties, and just not drink. But I realized that even when I was doing that, I was still obsessing about it. I'm like, fuck, I can't drink. Everybody else is drinking. So I'm still obsessing about alcohol. So I remember I was sitting here one night and drunk, and I said, all right, I'm out of wine. I'm not going to order any more from the delivery guy. Had a delivery guy try to cut me off one time. That should have been a bottom. The delivery guy's like, no more wine for you. You're drunk, man. I'm like, what?
Not to interrupt the story, but Uber Eats recently cut me off, so don't feel bad.
But yeah, I was just sitting here one night, and and I knew it was the end of the road because it was at the point where it's just like, I just knew. And I'm like, if this means I can't go out with my friends anymore, like I'm willing to give that up to stop drinking. And that was sounds like a small promise, but it was the big promise that kind of switched everything for me. And then after that, I told my friends, hey, I'm not going to be going out to the bars with you guys anymore. And they were like, that's okay. We'll still go out and, watch movies and hang out, which didn't happen, but that's, fine. But this was probably my 5th or 6th time trying to get sober. That's why, again, I tell people, like, it's hard. And sometimes it sticks the first time, and sometimes it sticks the 6th time. But, the danger is you do never know, like, if that time that you go out is going to be the time that you don't come back. So, but it stuck with me after that. Like, and honestly, and I thank God for this, like the desire to drink, like, was lifted after the alcohol got out of my system. Like, I got a sponsor, did the 12 steps, and I just don't have the desire to drink anymore. So that's not everybody's story. I know that. I know a lot of sober people who still battle the urge to drink, and I still have an addictive personality. So I have to watch that I don't overcompensate by, like, eating, or, well, that's all I would do. I'm too lazy to do anything else.
Can I ask what you replaced it with?
I replaced it with Nicorette gum for a little bit, which was ridiculous because I didn't smoke. Like, yeah, I got addicted to Nicorette gum. So that was my replacement. And yeah, now I just, yeah, I haven't really replaced it with anything at this point now. But yeah, the Nicorette gum, because it's so friggin' expensive. And again, I didn't even smoke. Like, so it was just ridiculous. But, you know, it's better than alcohol, you know. So,
Wow.
Okay.
but yeah, I did have my replacement addiction hanging out there.
Okay. What is it about the program that allows you to maintain your sobriety and thrive in such a harsh industry?
I think the best thing about the program is I think the 12 steps are almost like therapy in a way, because it makes you look at your own shit and like your part in things that have happened in your lives, because a lot of times, and it's just human nature, a lot of times we have resentments about things in our past, and we're letting our past define how we act now, and we're not letting a lot of that stuff go. But really, to let stuff go, you have to look at your part in it. You can blame people for things they did to you, but you have to look at your part in it. And if there's wreckage, if there's stuff that if there are relationships, if there's friendships, if there's business stuff that you've wrecked in the past, you have to actually look at it and look at your part in it and own up to that. And I will say my mom raised me that way. My mom was always like, if you're in the right, I'll defend you till the day I die. But if you do something wrong, you have to take responsibility of it. And I'm not going to be one of these parents that makes excuses for you and tries to get you out of trouble. So luckily I had that ingrained into me pre-drinking. But those lessons about not holding on to resentments, I think, is probably the biggest thing that's helped me. Because it's been in my nature, like, if, you know, and addicts do this too, where I blame everything on me. So if there's any problem, I just think it's all my fault, or used to think it was all my fault. So now I'm more balanced about looking at something. And if something's not in my control, I try not to control it. You know, so a lot of the lessons in the 12 steps that you learn are about letting go of things that you have no control over. Because a lot of times, you know, addicts are obsessive thinkers. Like, you know, so if you're sitting at home by yourself, you know, and you're thinking about everything that you want to have happen that's not happening, you're trying to control things that you have no control over. So it's more about trying to live in the present, and day by day, you know, that's another very important thing for addicts and sober people to focus on, is really living day by day. Like, what do I need to finish today? What has to happen today? And in a business like Hollywood, which is crazy and all over the place, and you never know what's going to happen and when people are going to change, you know, our plans are going to change. You really have to kind of live that life.
Okay.
And think that way.
How did you discover AA, and when did you know it was working?
This is another ridiculous story, but I first went when I was in New York, and, you know, I worked at New Line Cinema, and they had a lot of parties, a lot of crazy parties, and I was drinking all the time. And I was calling in sick a lot for work from drinking, and my boss at the time, you know, kind of knew something was going on. And because I knew at that time that, you know, people were like partying with Coke and stuff like that, I figured I would just tell my boss that I had a little Coke problem. And that's why I was missing work, because I thought that would make more sense than saying I was drinking. So yeah, I went and told him I had a little Coke problem, that I was done with it. And he talked to human resources, and they were like, you know, you need to go to a program. So one of my friends at New Line took me to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And so that's the first time I heard about the program. And, you know, I went, and the speaker seemed angry. So of course I was thinking of reasons why this is just not a group for me, and I don't belong here, because everybody's saying, you know, what you do when you first go to any kind of 12-step program. But then when I came out to LA, I in and out, in and out, in and out until I got, the last sponsor that I had. And you do have to really go into these meetings like looking for the similarities and not the differences in people, because again, you'll go in there trying to compare yourself to other people or look for any excuse not to stay. So I think once I found, I found a sponsor that I really connected with and still stay in touch with. And, just I think the 12 steps are very helpful. I mean, I have to be honest, I don't actively go to meetings anymore. I know a lot of people that do, but I don't ever want to say that I'm like, going to meetings when I'm not. But I definitely carry those principles with me, and those practices with me. And I think that it's a lifesaver. It's a lifesaver.
Is there a name you associate with your alcoholism?
No.
Is there someone you can look back to and say, that's why I'm an alcoholic?
No, I think I've always had an addictive personality. I think if I hadn't have picked up that first drink at 21, I probably wouldn't have picked up one, because it just wasn't in my, because again, like I'd been in New York, everybody was doing it, and I just kind of looked down on it. And it was just that happened to be that, again, just being in Kentucky, bored out of my but I do remember, I do have an obsessive, I did have an obsessive, I still do a little bit of it. I like doing the same things, eating the same stuff, it's just part of my nature, I think. But
were there any blessings to being an alcoholic?
I think the biggest one is that it gave me empathy and understanding about the disease, because again, I had a very, because my mom did smoke for a long time. I mean, most of her life, and she quit cold turkey like at 60, just quit cold turkey. So she never understood why you couldn't just quit drinking. And I've met a lot of people that still don't understand that. Like I have a lot of sober friends where their friends are like, oh, you can just have one drink now that you've been, like they don't understand. So I think the biggest blessing is that I got that empathy. And I always try to look on the bright side of things, but I'm glad that, I lived in New York when Final Destination came out. So I wasn't in Los Angeles, like being, in the Hollywood scene at all. I was still working at New Line after it came out. I waited, 2 years after it came out to leave the company. So I'm glad that I didn't come out to LA right after Final Destination, because I think if I did, I would have probably ended up killing myself, like getting involved in the heavy drugs, getting involved in that party scene, and I would have probably just been dead. So I'm glad that my career kind of, as a writer, you're kind of behind the scenes of something. So I stayed in New York and was very under the radar for a while, which I think was the biggest blessing, because I'd been drinking by that point. So I think if I'd have come out to LA, I would have definitely been dead.
Okay, my uncle went into treatment while my mom was pregnant with me after a lifetime of drug dealing and using. He said he knew it was time to get help when he loaded his car up with weed and got in and forgot what he had done it for. When did you know? Did you actually have an exact moment that you knew you needed help?
I think deep down I knew, but I had a lot of people telling me I needed help, and so then I would say, okay, well, I'll go to a meeting for, I was doing it for other people, but I think deep down I knew, like there's they always say we're our own worst enemies. Like, yeah. I know I need to go to the gym, just for health purposes. I know I need to go, but I don't want to friggin' go. So if I know something's good for me, like I don't eat vegetables, I drink V8 every once in a while, but I don't eat as much vegetables as I should. So I think deep down I knew it was a problem, because of course, how many mornings do you wake up and you don't know that what happened the night before? You're like, oh, I can't believe that I did this or that, or made a fool of my, like, there's a problem, but you can be very much in denial. Like I was very in denial, or not in denial, just being stubborn, being willful. Okay. So there wasn't a light bulb moment that went off. It was just, just kind of, at some point, I just was like, all right, I can't keep pretending there's not a problem here, you know?
Okay. We met at a creative writing convention called Imaginarium. You are great about sharing knowledge with up and coming writers. What advice would you give writers trying to break into Hollywood?
I'd give them a lot of it. No, I'm kidding. Kind of, let me see, my top things are, one, read a lot of scripts. You know, you can find scripts online almost for any movie. If you type in the name and then type in PDF, usually you can find a script online anywhere. And if you want to be a writer, like, you need to be passionate about it. Like this, I meet a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to try it for like a year, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going to leave. And it's like, it's a business. And there are thousands of people coming to LA every day wanting to be actors, writers, directors, cinematographers, everything that you can think of. So there's so many people out there that want to do the same thing that you want to do, that if it's not your passion, then it's probably not right for you. But if it is your passion, you have to be patient. It was 10 years from the year that I graduated high school that I sold Final Destination. Like, and when I first got to New York in 1991, I got an agent. I started getting acting gigs. I was like I was working at a studio. I'm like, oh, because I'd heard the 10-year rule. And I was like, there's not going to be a 10 years for me. Look at me. I'm already doing all this stuff. And it was 10 years till I sold something. And so I think you need to be patient. You need to be open to like constructive criticism. I think a big flaw that I see with a lot of writers is, you know, they think their first thing is amazing. And if you try to, they just don't listen to you. And my cat is finally out from hiding. So not gonna be able to get rid of her.
Why would you?
Why? She's adorable.
Yes, she is.
We've had several cat attacks on Recovery Unplugged Live, so our viewers are, they're definitely used to
All right,
that.
she's cleaning her paws. I don't know if she's getting ready to attack or just trying to. We'll see what happens. But again, being open to constructive criticism. If you want to be a screenwriter, you know, obviously learning the format. There's a lot of good books out there. I think Saving the Cat's a good modern book that, you know, there's a lot of older ones as well that are great. But, you know, I think reading scripts is the best education you can get. And, you know, honestly, it's really hard. Like I think the best thing to do nowadays, because people have iPhones and they can make stuff for nothing, is if you're a writer and you've written something that, you know, like, have your friends do a table read, make sure it sounds good. If you have some director friends or people that you know that want to be directors, like, write a short and let them direct it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that you get that, you try to figure out ways to get your work seen. You know, it used to be the dream was like, let me get a studio in Hollywood to make my movie. But that dream the business has changed so much, like that can't really be your dream anymore. If you look at the stuff that studios are putting out, it's mostly remakes, sequels, stuff that's based on a huge book property. You know, like Chris Nolan had to make, you know, after the first Batman, he tried to make Inception and the studio wouldn't let him. They're like, you got to do one more Batman before he could do Inception. So you don't really see the studios doing original stuff unless it's based off a video game or some other property. So I've had friends who've written scripts and then couldn't sell it, but then wrote a book, and then they were able to sell the book as a script, because everybody's looking for IPs now, like properties are already out there. But you know, I think you can't look for Hollywood to like fulfill your dreams in this area. I think you have to kind of look where you're at, find the creative community around you. At some point, if you sell a script, you will have to come to Hollywood. But I think it's like, look for the creative people that are near you, or find a creative community. If you're living somewhere like where I was living, where, you know, we didn't really have, you know, an appreciation for the arts, unfortunately, where I grew up. And I went to a college, you know, Berea College, which had a really good theater program. And, you know, New York is obviously very artist only, but, you know, you see a lot of like really thriving like film communities in like Texas and Atlanta and, you know, Louisiana. They're all over the place. So, you know, kind of find a good, healthy tribe of people. Because definitely when I'm talking to students, especially, like, I always talk about sobriety, because, you know, I warn them, like, that's the thing you have to be mindful of, is like, when you're young, you think you're invincible. And, you know, a little drinking turns into like, okay, well, maybe I can try a line of Coke here or something like that. And it definitely is an issue. I've seen it derail so many careers. I've seen it destroy so many careers before they even started. So, you know, definitely if you think you have a problem with any kind of substance abuse, it's better to deal with it when you're younger, because the longer you wait, the more damage you can cause in your career.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, let's have a little fun. If your life was a movie, what would the title be?
If I what? Oh, if my life was a movie? Oh, I already thought about this. Hillbilly in Hollywood. Yeah, that would be the official title. My really awful un-PC title that would never get made and would get me in trouble for trying to do it would be Mulatto Man, a biography. But mulatto is not a really cool PC phrase anymore. So
what word you said? Mulatto?
Mulatto Man.
Yeah. That was the un-PC. Would never do it, obviously, because I'd get raked over the coals for it.
Well,
but,
if Louis C.K. was still here, you could get away with it.
Yeah,
because that's on the par with Pootie Tang.
Yeah, but yeah, Hillbilly in Hollywood would be my life.
I never heard a mulatto speak to themselves as a hillbilly. I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah, we're a rare breed.
That's amazing.
We're very rare. There was another biracial couple of kids that lived in my town. And it was only us from grade 0 through college. That's how undiverse my community was growing up. But yeah, my mom had a very body sense of humor, and so do I. So sometimes most of the time I think things are funny that might offend other people. But so we'll stick with Hillbilly.
I'm voting for mulatto. I like the mulatto.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you, Del.
I've been called a mulatto, but they got it wrong. I'm just mixed. You know. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's all. That's cool. I love
regional difference. It's a regional difference. That's all it is, a regional difference. What you call yourself.
Yep.
Okay. If you could cast any actor in the known cinematic universe to play you in that movie, who would it be?
Oh, Lord. Morgan Freeman, but he's older. Love Morgan Freeman. Who my age? It's so funny.
Would you go with Trevor Noah as you then?
I mean, I think he's really funny.
Del said no. Like Del, really. Twins,
no, it's got to be one of those guys from that TV show Breakout. One of those two guys, those two brothers.
I don't know.
Because they had an ethnic feel to them, but they were still good looking and strong and powerful.
Yeah. Oh, I love you think I'm strong and powerful.
You made it. You're strong and powerful, and that's see. A lot of people. I don't know what we're here. You know, it's funny. Amy never even asked me about my addiction. Like, I guess she assumes that just because I'm some being, but she never even asked me.
She just assumed you'd chime in.
No, but I've been on the show a number of times. She never said, "Del, what's your addiction? Have you ever had it?" And I'm just like, I'm not going to make light of anything, but I feel a little left out.
Oh, what's your
well, what's your addiction, Del?
When I was a kid, I watched Wizard of Oz probably 3,000-4,000 times, and no one could figure out why I kept watching it so much. As I got older, I realized I like midget women with big rear ends. And
come.
No, I'm serious. It's a problem for me. You want to make light of it, go ahead. But it's a problem for me. Now, I realized I couldn't get the young ones because they were too fast. So I started looking at the older midget women with big rear ends. And I think it worked out for me. I've never been able to get my fill. That's why I'm not an addict any longer. But, you can hope.
Do you own the website?
I'm thinking about it.
Midgetwomenwithbigrearends.com.
You know what's always been interesting to me is opium. Opium has always, I've never done it, but I have this image of me as a 300-year-old Chinese man with this long, because I saw a movie about it, and it created an interest on my part to try opium. I'm not joking around. I'm serious as hell.
Now I have that image of you.
DMT, ayahuasca. I'd give it a shot. I haven't yet, but I don't want to say that on a show about addiction because, in our community for a very high degree, you don't see a lot of minorities with really big addictions coming out because if they can't afford it, they can't get it. That's why you have Black communities, you have winos, right? You don't have full-blown people going into these centers. I recently had to help someone who had to be put into a center. And so their mother reached out to me from New York and said, "Hey, can you help?" I said, "Yeah, of course I'll help." Well, I got the kid into a hospital. I got him into a hotel. And then she said, "Listen, get them into a good recovery center. The recovery center is $26,000 for a 2-month stay. And she said, here, pay it. And he left 4 or 5 days later.
Yeah.
After she paid. And blacks don't have $26,000.
Yeah.
You understand? And for the most part, they just don't have it. Let's not pretend. So it's tougher, but it's a sad thing to hear about these situations, because, you know, you say you're strong and powerful, man. How do you beat an addiction like that? Come back and do better professionally. My God. And if you kick the drug or the alcohol, you guys are amazing to me. That's better than what I could do. Because if it was up to me, I'd have a long pipe full of opium and about 600 midgets around me. It'd be great.
Well, you know, I think that's an issue.
Don't laugh at my pain, Amy, please.
That's definitely an issue I think that our country hasn't dealt with, and I think it's also just because growing up where I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, I don't think, you know, there's a huge addiction problem in rural areas with you know poor white people, and too it's just, you know, the people that are in poverty are more prone to addiction because they have a lot of pain in their life because drugs are so cheap.
And because they have lesser health care. But remember, don't forget that Reagan and Ollie North literally dropped off tons of PCP into black communities throughout the Americas. In Watts, Compton, New York, Brooklyn, they dropped that stuff off and used it to fund the Contra War. They were creating drug addicts. But you don't see a lot of black people on PCP anymore.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's more than just, you know, their social situation. Sometimes someone's working against you. It's a tough thing, man.
Okay, Jeffrey, what is it like having an iconic horror franchise in your body of work?
You know, like I said, again, just a fan of these movies growing up, like, it's really cool. Like, I don't sit around going, oh, I don't think about it. You know, when I get the log truck names, I smile. But when other people start talking about it, it's actually really cool. And again, just to show you how I don't think about it, one of my friends pointed out, I'm the first person of color who's actually created a horror franchise that's made that much money. James Wan did Saw, so, you know, years later, but you know, I was the first, and I never thought about it till one of my friends pointed it out. I was like, holy shit, that's kind of cool.
Champion, baby. Champion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I mean,
powerful, baby.
So I talk to Amy all the time, and Amy is always talking to me about famous people and people in the biz. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know who that person is. She's like, oh, it's in this movie. I'm like, I don't know that. And she goes, well, I'm talking to Jeffrey Reddick. I met him, and he might come on our show. And I'm like, well, who's that? Who's that? And she goes, it's the creator of Final Destination. I'm like, yes. So on that note, we have, like, Brandon said he's a huge fan. Jim said he's a huge fan. Jim also commented, he said the creativity of the kills from that franchise is what people really responded to from his aspect. He wanted to know, how much does producer interference affect the end product of a director's vision?
It depends, really. Like with Final Destination, it's different because we've had the same lead producer on it, which is great, and so he's very good at handling the studio and the creative. And with Final Destination, I mean, after the second one, I mean, once we saw the first one was kind of a hit, I wrote the story for the second one. But after that, the studio, you know, they're kind of in charge of it, you know, because they know it's a well-oiled kind of machine. So they don't they don't want people coming in and going too crazy. Sorry, my cat's tail keeps coming up in this screen. So it's usually a joint creative venture with the producers in the studio and the writer director. By the time they bring on a director, the script's usually done. With Final Destination, I know for myself in other situations, you know, a lot of times you get producers who are just kind of bulldoze over the creative. Again, that's not the case with Final Destination. The studio, that's why they haven't cranked out a ton of them, is they don't, you know, again, if this was Friday the 13th, we'd probably have 20 of them by now. Which I wouldn't mind, because I get a little cheese when they do another one. But and I like cheese. But but you know, they've only made 5 of them, so it'll be really exciting to have another one come out, and I think it'll start hopefully another cycle of them. So, but yeah, Craig Perry is the producer on it. He also produced American Pie, and he's he's a big horror fan. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet and one of the smartest guys you'll ever meet. So having somebody like him shepherding your franchise, it's going to be in good hands.
Okay. What do you want the world to remember about you and your work?
That's interesting. Because I've always said I could die today and be happy because Final Destination was kind of a icon and that would kind of look funny on my tombstone. But hopefully I'll be able to create some more stuff over the years that speak to more people and speak, the biggest thing that I've always fought for in my work, and it's not really come to fruition yet, is I'm just because of my religious background and, being an interracial child and, being gay, unity and kind of bringing people together has always been important to me. And I think showing diversity in films, whether it's racial or whether it's gay or straight or people with disabilities, people don't understand the power of film and television. I think they do in a way, but back in the day when Kirk and Uhura kissed on Star Trek, I remember that because that was the first time. I mean, of course they were under the control of aliens that were forcing them to kiss, so they didn't want to kiss, but they had to. But I remember that when Vanessa Williams won Miss America, there was a huge backlash against that, and I remember that. And when Jamie Lee Curtis and I'm blanking on his name. He's a ball player. They were on TV Guide or TV News magazine, and he was an African-American sports player, and he had him on her shoulder, and there was a big uproar about that. And I remember thinking as a child, wow, she's so brave to do that, and it's I guess I just hope people, but it's funny, but it's also, if you think about it, it's sad that you have to think it's brave that a woman takes a white woman takes a picture with a black man as being brave, but she got a lot of hate mail off of that, and death. It's crazy, the world that we live in. So
I don't think it's because she was white. I think it's because her rear end wasn't big enough.
No, it was because she was white.
You think so?
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, she's a horror fan star. Do you think those guys? It was the ilk of people who hate because they have no talent or skill or ability, or was it just? They were, because you got to remember, you got to separate real people from non-humans. There's a lot of non-humans out there who see color and stop. That's a non-human. If you're human, you can see everything about a person, their soul, their quality, their love, their integrity. You can see all that. But if you're a non-human, all you can see is color. A lot of non-humans out there. Hate mail from a non-human wouldn't bother me at all.
I think that
and I've been called the N-word and told to leave a girl's house because the parents saw me in there. And they went, get that N-word out of our effing house. He's a piece. He's not even a human. That happened.
Yeah.
So let's not. I was not upset until I found out the girl knew how her parents felt and did it to show some type of authority against her parents. She wanted to be. I'm going to show that I'm independent. So she did it on purpose, basically. But don't you think they did that show knowing they would get that kind of backlash? There would be extra promotion for them.
No, I don't think.
Really?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because it was an innocent enough picture. It wasn't like she was being sexy or anything like that. I
saw Ralph Northam in blackface. That was innocent. Yeah. I'm just saying, man. Innocent or innocent? I don't know. Come on now.
But
I'm sorry.
No. As sappy as it sounds, I hope people remember that I tried to leave the world a better place than it was when I came into it. That's it. I've never been one for I would like to get an Academy Award, but I don't need a $6 million mansion or all this other stuff and hundreds of boys hanging off me. Men, I totally need to separate that now because people get freaky about Hollywood. I'm still that simple country guy at heart, but my mom, again, she taught me to love everybody. She taught me to respect people that respected you, and she taught me that people weren't born with hate in their heart, that it was put there by other people, and that it could be excised, and sometimes it gets exhausting trying to educate people about racism and homophobia. It feels like it shouldn't be on us to constantly be all right, I'll explain why that's racist.
It's amazing that we're still doing that to this day.
Yeah, it gets tiring, but that's if you want a better world, you got to kind of honestly, I feel like you have to hear where everybody's coming from, because sometimes again they've just been raised wrong. And,
Can I ask a question? Do you mind, Amy?
Yeah.
If I ask a question?
No, not at all.
You mentioned earlier on that in your career you wrote a letter to a guy and said, "Hey, I've spent money on your movies. At least you could do is read my script or my outline, whatever you've sent."
Yeah.
And I don't know that you sent him a whole lot either.
No, I told him I'd spent like $2 on his stuff because movies were really cheap back
Yeah,
then.
dime, nickel, yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you sneak it, it's free. But has anyone contacted you the same way in your career now that you've been?
Yeah,
They said the same thing to you, and did it work?
That damn story's on IMDb now, so yep, I get it all the time.
Really?
The funny thing is, it's not that it doesn't work on me. It's just the difference back then was, Bob Shea ran a studio, a small studio, so he had a lot of people working for him. I am here in my apartment with my cat, so it's hard for me to read a lot of material. That's why I'm definitely working to like at some point have my own production company and be able to kind of read a lot more material than I can now. But I always judge a lot of film festival competitions. I do like mentorship stuff. I speak at school, so I do everything, whatever I can to like give back to people.
That's fantastic. That's all I wanted to know. That's great.
Okay. Two more questions. This one, oh crap. What words of advice do you have for those artists struggling with mental illness and or substance abuse and wanting to make it in the industry?
I think the thing that you'll find in this industry is that you don't hear about is it's a very supportive community if you're trying to better yourself and help yourself. So if you have an addiction problem, LA has the best recovery in the world that I found, just because there's so much of it. There's literally a meeting almost every hour somewhere in the city. And so many people in the industry are very open about getting sober and getting clean. And also about mental health issues. Like I've never, I've worked in writers' rooms. I've worked at studios. I've worked with people who have mental health issues, and that's never stopped them from getting hired. That's never stopped them from moving. Like nobody's ever said, "Oh, we can't work with this person because they have a mental health issue." Like, for all the, bullshit that people kind of put out about how Hollywood is, like, it's a very understanding and accepting place. If you're creative and you're talented, that's all they care about, Now, obviously, if you're an addict and you're not treating it and it's hurting work, then you're going to get in trouble for that. But if you need to tell somebody like, I'm going to, go to a rehab and get sober, nobody's going to be like, well, once they come back, we're not going to work with that person anymore. So I think people would be surprised how welcoming the creative community is, especially around mental health. Like that's just nothing that I honestly have never once since I've been in this business like 30 some years, like I've never once heard anybody not hire somebody who'd been open and honest about a mental health issue. And if they were recovered, nobody's not hired them. It is funny. They do keep hiring the addicts who aren't recovered until it finally like costs them so much money that they can't do it anymore. But it's a very accepting, understanding business in that way.
Okay.
Which you wouldn't expect. I mean, just from, again, you hear all the, everybody thinks about the glitz, like the red carpet. Like I grew up thinking the red carpet was like this block long, like elegant carpet. It's a piece of red carpet about yay big, enough for the camera to come into. Around it's just all dirty sidewalk, and they have a little tiny backdrop behind it. Hollywood's all about illusion, so people get so caught up in the kind of glamour and illusion of Hollywood that they don't realize like 90% of the people that work here are just hardworking, struggling, trying to pay their bills, good, decent people. And yes, so I would never, especially with mental health issues, I would never let the fear of that would stop you from having a career in Hollywood. I would never let that. I've just never experienced it at all. So, that's not an issue that I've ever experienced.
So, last question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm inviting you to the Conquering Disabilities with Film International Film Festival. I know you said it would depend on your film, but I just wanted to know, would you be interested in coming as a guest of the festival?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Yeah, if my schedule's free, I'll definitely come. It's just, schedules are, especially around with the COVID stuff and things getting pushed and reshuffled. It's just going to be.
COVID.
What's that?
They killed Floyd. COVID went away. They killed one more black person. They can cure AIDS. What are you talking about? That's all it takes, man. Where COVID? Where is it? You don't hear about it anymore. It's done. I heard about it in a week.
We'll find out in 2 weeks.
Oh yeah,
come on now.
In 2 weeks, we'll be hearing about it.
I doubt it. There's other stuff planned coming your way. Be careful. You're the final destination guy. You're supposed to know this stuff. There's more coming.
You should be on the forefront of death, Jeffrey.
You should be Nostradamus or somebody.
Disappointing all of us.
Well, that was my last.
That's how I like to leave things. I like to get everybody up here and to just disappoint them right at the end as I'm leaving.
Well, that was my last question. Does anybody else have questions?
There is one more from Jim, who's been watching live. He said, do you know Jason Blumhouse, or are you familiar with his business model, and how do you feel about it, if so?
Yes, that's a very good question. I do know Jason. I'm not like best friends with him. I've met him a couple times, and my friend Ryan Turek's the head of their production company now at Blumhouse. You know what? He is a master for creating that model, and he does it very, very well. The only downside to that is people who are trying to invest in films think that, oh, well, Blumhouse does this, you can do it. So it's really hard to get people to invest in films. They want to put like $2 million into your film, but then they want you to get like Ethan Hawke to star in it.
Right.
And they're like, well, he's in a Blumhouse movie. That was only a $3 million film. It's like, well, that's because Jason Blum gives him back end points. And because it's a Blumhouse movie, it's going to be successful. So Ethan Hawke's going to get a shit ton more money when it comes out than taking a big rate up front. So it's kind of become a model that people that aren't really in the business try to emulate, but with this giving, small budgets, but then trying to get like a big star in their film. And unless you're Blumhouse with that track record, you can't really do that. So it's a great model, and if people can emulate it, it would be amazing. But I think the only downside to it is that like a lot of people think the industry's like that now. It's like, oh, well, just let's do it like Blumhouse does. It's like, but we're not Blumhouse.
But he's even backed by a major studio, right?
I don't know if he's.
Doesn't he have an output deal with Sony or something?
He's an output deal with Sony.
He can green light up to X amount, but after that, it has to go to them. So even then, he's not independent. He's still running off the Hollywood machines. I wish people would get that too, because it's the same as Robert Rodriguez. Everyone thinks he made that stupid movie for $8,000. He did not. He may have made it for $8,000, but they put $300,000 to $400,000 to get it ready to release it. So when you're talking about El Mariachi, you can follow that model too, but the studio still spent.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 figures.
Oh yeah.
Plus getting it ready for release, and then another 7 figures in promotion and advertising. So that's interesting, but I don't know. He's got somebody behind him too.
Yeah. The thing I love about Blumhouse too is they do the horror, but they do other things. They do like Get Out. They did some, they did Get Out, and they're just they expand they just expand what they're trying to do. But I think they came up with a great model. It's hard for other people to emulate it, because you have to have that name recognition to, again, get an A-list star to say, yes, I'll be in your movie for no money, just give me back end points. So that's the biggest kind of negative, I guess, that's kind of come out of that model.
Okay. I have a question. Were you on set for all of your for all of the Final Destination films?
I was on set for the first 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. So what do you remember? What was your favorite kind of memory from, if you think back on those 2 sets, action scenes, death scenes, going over the script with people? What were your kind of famous or most memorable moments from those 2 being on set?
I'm just trying to think. It was funny because they were such big sets that I kind of was just in awe for the first film I went to. Like I actually had cameo. It never made it to the film, but I was like a security guy at the airport. So they built this huge like hangar and, you know, security place, and they had hundreds of extras. And, you know, it's just crazy when you walk on the set and you're like, wow, like I made this, you know what I say? Like,
right,
you know,
right.
taking all the credit, of course it takes everybody, but you know, it's like you're like something that I started on pen and paper, like led to all this. So that I think that was on the first film, that was probably the most I've been struck by. Because I'd done a movie, Return to Cabin by the Lake, which was a TV movie. It's just ridiculous, but it's fun. But I went to set for that too. So that was my first time being on set for that first movie, which was cool. But I actually, I got to go to set a lot of times. But I think with Final Destination, it was seeing the vast, that was like a studio production. And it was just, and they had the fake plane, you know, set up on a gimbal. And I'm just like, this is crazy.
Do they want the writer on set, major productions?
I
found the answer to be no, but that's just me.
The good thing about me is because I've been in the business so long, they usually don't want the writers on set. But the reason they don't want the writers on set usually is because they're afraid the writer is going to start trying to tell the director, like, oh, I didn't mean it that way when I wrote it. And once you kind of write a script, you have to kind of like let it go.
Right.
I remember one funny story on the set of Tamra. You know, and I tell people before, when I want to visit set, I'm like, look, I know why you don't writers visit set. I've been at the sets of my films. I don't say anything. I just want to come and observe. So they usually, I've been able to go to like the sets of all my films. But I remember on Tamra, and this is sneaky because I remember I was just sitting, you know, eating some Twizzlers, and one of the actors just came over to me and just casually asked a question about like, you know, oh, I love the script, you know, like, what were you thinking about this? And I said, oh, this, you know, I just responded what I was thinking when I wrote this scene. Little did I know the actor and director were arguing over how to play that scene. So the actor went back and said, well, I just talked to Jeffrey and he said this. So it was like the most, you know, I'm sitting there all just minding my own business, and they came over very casually and we're talking for a few minutes. Like, yeah, what were you thinking when you wrote this? And it just never occurred to me that, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, and so the director came over, you know, we're like really good friends, but he came over at the time. He's like, Jeffrey, don't talk to the actors. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, you talk to them. I said, yeah, we just chatted for a few minutes. Yeah, but you told them this. I'm like, well, that's actually not what I said. I told him what I was thinking when I wrote the character. But he's like, yeah, just don't talk to me anymore about, you know, because they'll throw it back in my face. And I'm like, okay, got it. That was a long answer. The short answer is no, they don't usually want writers on set.
No, they don't. As I said, I've been on sets where they ask the writers to leave. You know, it's just, you shouldn't be here. Yeah.
I never go on set to like talk about, because I know that that's a good thing about working at a studio is you kind of let a lot of that ego stuff go. That can kind of crush you if you again, like when you get a script rejected, it can just be soul crushing when nobody buys your script. Because then you start going, am I good? Is this, you know, or if they change your script or they rewrite it. So you have to kind of get used to that being part of the business. So I learned that from an early age. So that's why I think I've been able to thrive, you know, along with my sobriety, you know, as long as I have without going crazy or punching people. But since I know what they're afraid of, like when I go to sets, I'm literally just like a fly on the wall. You know, I'm just sitting there soaking it all in and I'll talk to the actors. I just won't talk to them about the script, you know.
Cool.
Is that it?
I'm not asking anything else. I learned my lesson.
I thought
back at the midget conversation, I learned to stop. I'm done.
I mean, thank you everyone for tuning in though, and great questions from the audience. We had a really good group of people watching tonight, so definitely awesome to hear your perspective, Jeffrey. Tell everyone else again what is coming out for you, what's up next, and what's hopefully like starting in the fall. Yeah,
absolutely. Don't Look Back is the name of the film I directed, so that'll hopefully be coming out in the fall. And I guess like shameless plug, but you know, the easiest thing to do is follow me on Twitter because that's where I kind of, you know, announce stuff or kind of say what's going on. So you can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey A. Reddick. And I'm also on Instagram, but I don't have much of a, you know, on Instagram, unless you're taking like shirtless pictures or pictures of like, well, just shirtless pictures, like nobody cares.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, you know.
And no one likes my shirtless pictures anyway, so I'm not going to do that.
They wouldn't like mine either. And I'm very boring on Instagram. So, but you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, and like I definitely post like updates.
Cool.
About
So it's Jeffrey A. Reddick on Twitter.
Yes.
Is the best. Okay. Del, Amy, anything else?
Just let you know that Instagram is very, very powerful. Unfortunately, my page has suffered because the show Little People Big World was recently canceled, so I lost a lot of followers.
Oh.
A midget joke.
Follow me, and then I'll follow you.
Okay.
There it is. Amy, are you on Twitter or Instagram?
I'm on Twitter at Amy L. McCorkle, and I'm on Instagram at Letters to Daniel.
All right. And I'm on Twitter as SGE Media Group. I got to change that. Update it
And,
so people know how to get me.
Me and Del are going to be on next week with 4.
Why do you keep having me back? I love to come, but I don't want to take away from your show with my stupidity.
No, I'm going to have 4 accepted filmmakers, screenwriters from my festival on, and I like.
Hey, I'll help any way I can. You know that. I'm always a fan. I'm a fan of yours. I've always been a fan of yours. In fact, I'm reaching out to some of the people around you, asking them if they would mind doing stories in the AOF magazine as a payment for being so kind and supportive to you. That's one way I can help. So I want to do that for a number of people because you deserve every good thing that is coming your way, Amy. You are powerful, strong. You never quit, and you've got the tenacity of a bulldog.
Yeah.
So God bless you. You're amazing. And even to put this show together, most people can't do what you've done. And for that, I just applaud you every day of my life. God bless you.
I love you, Dale.
I love you back.
And Jeffrey, thank you for coming on, talking about your experiences, not only with Hollywood, but with dealing with addiction. And that's the kind of things that we're talking about here with not only Recovery Unplugged Live, but also with the Conquering Disabilities with Film International Film Festival. So check both of those out and stay tuned for everything coming up. And we'll see you next Monday, so to speak, right? That's what I hear.
Monday.
We got 4 more people.
4 more people.
Thanks for having me,
All right,
everybody.
everyone.
Fantastic.
You guys have a great night.
Bye,
Here's a couple
Jeffrey.
trailers.
Take care.
Thanks all. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Jeff.
You too.
All right.
Mom? Dad?
Ever since I found this thing, I don't know, some weird stuff's been happening.
Hello.
Mom?
You never listened to me!
Did you make a wish?
Aaron, it's a miracle. Your father is home.
The universe demands balance. For there to be life, there must be death.
Aaron!
Do you hear that?
In the Bible, they're known as demons. In the Quran, they're called jinn.
The jinn can take any form.
You can't run from this, Aaron. It's gonna follow you.
It gets stronger with every wish.
That's not Dad! That was a demon, Mom. What is wrong with you?
Don't you talk to me like that! What have you done?
Dear Daniel Craig, life did not always look like this. This marked a moment of triumph, a way of crushing an abysmal past and daring those with a stereotypical view of those with mental illness to challenge me on any front. To many, this was just a documentary. For me and Missy, this was our life.
It's like my skin is coming off. And my thoughts, they're racing so fast. I can't keep up.
I'm suffering too, you know. You're not the only one.
It's like my mind is coming apart and I can't get it to come together.
I think it's more than just that. Amy's been having a really hard time lately. She goes on these crying jags. She explodes without warning. She's so angry and so paranoid these days. She's not the happy Amy that I remember from Kentucky.
She thinks you're manic depressive. I, however, do not. I think this is something you've been obsessing on. I believe that it's all in your head.
Just come here. We're gonna get you some help. It'll be okay. You do have a diagnosis. You have rapid cycling manic depression.
Dear Daniel Craig, bipolar disorder and those that saw it as contagious sought to pull me under, snap me in half, break me down. Even those well-intentioned do-gooders who see therapy and medication as bad and wrong, who see mentally ill individuals as hapless and hopeless, they're wrong. I found hope in your work. A comrade in Missy, my rock when no one else understood. You two are my twin lights when this disease threatened to take me down. And treatment was what got me through. Thank you, Daniel, for your talent and your work. Thank you for everything. Sincerely, Amy McCorkle.